So welcome everybody, and thank you for joining us. Tonight is going to be a very special class. It is their Women Wellness Month, and I always like to have a special event for women. And last month I promised y'all menopause. We were going to be tackling menopause, and I never knew at that point that we were going to have a special guest. And I don't know how many of y'all watch or listen to the Exam Room podcast. Anybody?
I do sometimes.
Yeah, so a few. So the Exam Room podcast is with Chuck Carroll. He's also known as the weight loss champion. I believe he's lost 320 pounds. But he has a weekly podcast from PCRM, and he has just all these fabulous plant-based experts on there. Mainly doctors, but he also has some non-doctor as well. But anyway, I heard Brooke Bussard, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, talking about her new book, which is Outsmarting Menopause. KZ is going, my cameraman is going to, so Outsmarting Menopause. And I thought, oh my gosh, this sounds like something I need. And then I thought, well, I think a lot of my class need this as well. So here I sent Brooke an email, and I said, I don't know if you'd be interested, because you can have an idea and they can either say yes or no. And if they are not asked, the answer is automatically no. But she said yes. So we are super, super excited to have her on. And she's going to start. So our format is going to be a little bit different tonight. We are going to start with her presentation and her question and answers. And I promised her that all of y'all are going to be asking a whole lot of questions, okay? So make sure you're challenging her with these questions. Let me introduce Dr. Bussard. Now, Brooke started her career in health as a graduate of the University of Virginia School of Medicine. Soon after her residency began in internal medicine, she realized that her passion was in prevention rather than the traditional prescription therapeutic treatment. Brooke became a personal trainer and nutrition specialist with the American Council of Exercise and began to see what a tremendous impact nutrition made on overall health. After plowing through a snowstorm of conflicting and confusing information in an effort to help clients achieve success, she learned how a lifestyle of whole food, plant-based eating could maximize health and optimize everyday life. Now her focus is to help others reconsider how we achieve health and understand that weight loss and maintenance do not require calorie counting and food restriction. A dietary lifestyle based on fruits, vegetables, grains, and legumes creates increased energy, clearer skin, better digestion, and so much more. Brooke is the author of the book, Chew on This, Bite-sized Stories About Nutrition. There you go. A fun, easy guide that answers many of the questions people have on their plant-based journey. Earlier this year, Brooke published her second book, Outsmarting Menopause, Conversations about Metabolism, Muscles, Mood, and more. So folks, help me welcome Dr. Brooke Bussard. All yours, Brooks.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Debbie, for the invitation and for being such an amazing resource for women and men who want to improve their health. I am always happy to help any fellow Food for Life instructor and really anybody who's passionate about plant-based eating and, you know, using lifestyle choices to help us live longer and better. As Debbie said, I'm excited to share some information from my new book and really help you guys navigate through menopause and into the next chapter of your life, because it's not just about the time around when you lose your period and things change. It's about the entire lifespan after that. Because when we're living in this new environment without estrogen, even if we are taking hormone replacement, there's still a lot of things that are different than they were in our reproductive years. So here's an outline of the book, just to give you a sampling of topics that we could cover if we had a full day retreat with Debbie serving us meals, you know, 3 times in the day. But we're only going to touch on some of these because we've only got 35 or 40 minutes, and then we'll do some Q&A. And then you can move on to Debbie's cooking demo and other Food for Life materials. But before we dig in, let's set the scene a little bit. And I'd love it if you guys could type in the chat, which animals go through menopause?
Probably all of them.
Wow.
Well, maybe we could pare it down, because some of these animals lay eggs, right? And so they probably don't go through menopause, right? Certainly not in the way we do. So let's just say mammals. Which mammals go through menopause?
I'm guessing none of them.
Yeah.
Well, let's think about all of them. We've got, you know, the more domesticated ones and then the more wild ones. Yeah, so there's a lot of them out there, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it turns out, as far as menopause goes, there are only a
None.
few mammals that go through it.
Hmm.
Yeah, so humans, orcas, and a few other whales are the only mammals known to go through menopause.
Huh.
This female elephant, on the other hand, her fertility will decline with age, but she can typically reproduce until death, which could
Wow.
be 70, 80 years old.
I would fall on my sword, just saying.
So this is very unlike us human females, right? Who we stop producing on average around the age of 51. And as I thought about this more, I realized, you know what, we used to be able to reproduce until death, until about 100 or 125 years ago. Can anyone maybe type in the chat, what is the average life expectancy of a woman in 1900? How long did women live on average in 1900?
Probably to the 70s.
I'm saying 50.
We had
52.
52, 22, 35, 50,
Oh,
40.
wow, we're all over the place, huh?
Yeah.
Okay, well, the answer, the average life expectancy of a woman in 1900 was 47.
Mm.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and so that is 4 years before the average age of menopause now. Isn't that crazy? So
Wow.
most women throughout history didn't even deal with menopause. But because of antibiotics and sanitation and all the advances in medicine and life, we now have to navigate this new situation. So I like to say it's a blessing and a curse, right? It's a blessing because we get to live longer, but there are some things that we need to figure out in order to continue living and thriving in the way that we want to. So I wanted to share this reel that I made for the book launch.
Wow.
And we'll rise up.
Is that okay?
I like the waves. We'll rise up. In spite of the ache, we'll rise up. And we'll do it 1,000 times again.
Isn't that fascinating?
Yeah.
Yes.
It
Yes.
blows my mind. As I really started to wrap my head around it, I thought this is absolutely incredible. Now, enough time has gone by that this should not be the case, but there's clearly a lack of education in med school and residencies around menopause. And this study that was published in 2019 showed us that They interviewed 177 resident physicians in family medicine, internal medicine, and OBGYN, and found that fewer than 7% of them felt prepared to help manage the care of women through their menopausal years. And it
Wow.
hasn't changed much since this, was published 6 years ago. So I want to point out that it's really important for each one of us to really seek the answers that we need for our questions and seek out providers who've gotten some postgraduate training for menopause related issues. Have conversations with your own provider so that they can understand that there's a knowledge gap. And, from the WAVE study that was done by PCRM, which I'll talk more about, the SWAN study, which is the study of women's health across the nation, and many others, there is good evidence that a plant-based diet can help with symptoms and a lot of the sequelae that happen during the menopause transition. But that's just one piece of the puzzle. So we're going to talk about how different types of exercise can help fight the effects of aging and menopause. And so really, I want you to be thinking about these two things together, aging and menopause, because we can't really separate them. So we do know that the changes in our hormones, the loss of estrogen, sort of exacerbates all of these issues we face as we get older. So I talk about menopause, but really we've got both things going on that we need to deal with. Okay, but I did want to point out this Tackling Menopause fact sheet that the Food4Life team put together. I'm so glad that you guys have that. It's a great resource, and it includes recipes, which is always a nice bonus. But let's dive into the book. So I'll give you an overview and then we'll dive into more details. So in chapter 1, I'm going to talk about hormones and how they just go haywire and how that changes your body composition. Chapter 2, I look at sleep. Chapter 3 is nutrition. And then 4, 5, 6, and 7 is all about the musculoskeletal system. So strength training and bone health. And then interval training is the chapter 6. And then chapter 7 is tendons and ligaments, so our connective tissue. I'm sure you guys have heard of people getting frozen shoulder. It's more common in women as they go through menopause because our tendons and ligaments have estrogen receptors that all of a sudden are not getting occupied. Chapters 8 and 9, I talk about neurotransmitters and brain health. Chapter 10 is about heart health. 11 is breast health. And then 12 is sort of the not so obvious things. And I'll just mention it here because I'm not going to talk about chapter 12. I'm only going to talk about a few of these chapters, but chapter 12, I mentioned that ringing in the ears. Sometimes people have something called tinnitus and they get this ringing in their ear. And there have been several journal articles published in ear, nose, and throat journals about the use of estrogen in those cases. And for some women, it cures their tinnitus. So I like to point that out because I think it's not known by most people. And for women who have to live with tinnitus for the rest of their life, it's dreadful. It's just a constant annoying problem that they have. Okay, so all of the chapters in the book are written as conversations, as I mentioned in the subtitle, are conversations about metabolism, muscles, mood, and more. And the audience that I write for are people who want information delivered in story format. So many people over the years have told me that they get too bogged down when there's a lot of technical jargon, the information's too dense. But most people like stories, so that's how I decided to write. So let's jump into chapter 1 and set the stage for the change that's about to occur. Now, most women spend several decades of their life with these fairly regular cycles of estrogen and progesterone following a very well orchestrated sequence. It's not always smooth sailing, but typically it follows a very nice cycle. And then bam, the ovaries start thinking about retirement and they hop on a roller coaster where you have estrogen surging and plummeting, and you just don't know when it's going to happen. And this can last for 4 to 7 to 10 years, depending on the woman. The length of perimenopause is extremely variable. And that makes it even more stressful and confusing because you don't know how long you're going to have to stay in this situation until it sort of tapers off and you're feeling a little more settled in your new body. So during this time, the levels of estrogen and progesterone, they're different than they were for so many years. And the ratio of the two hormones is also different. So the female body is a very finely tuned machine, as you all know. I know many people use the reference of Princess and the Pea because it's so true for females. That these changes in estrogen and progesterone, they end up causing an internal stress in the body. And we know that stress causes our cortisol levels to rise, right? So we end up with a stress response. And this all plays into our metabolism and how it changes during this phase of life. The environment becomes more catabolic. Now, that's the most scientific word I think I'm going to use today. Do you guys know what catabolic means? The best way to think of it is think of the opposite, which is anabolic. So you can think about bodybuilders. Think of, who am I thinking of that was the governor of California? Arnold Schwarzenegger, right? Probably took a lot of anabolic steroids to get huge. So anabolic means you're in this growth phase where you can grow tissue. Catabolic is a breakdown state. And when your cortisol is high, you're in a catabolic state. And so women going through menopause, they end up being more catabolic than anabolic. And that's not good because you start breaking down muscle, which is very important for our metabolism, and you start breaking down bone, which we all need, right? But you also start to promote fat storage because part of this catabolic process is that you're in this survival mode. And when you're in survival mode, your body says, oh, I better put some fat into storage in case I need it later. Okay, so let's look at chapter 1, where some women are talking about this hormonal turbulence and these body composition changes. 3 friends are going to be together, helping one of them, Rachel, pick out an outfit for a new job interview. And she's frustrated because her clothes don't fit as well as they used to. And even though her weight is the same, her shape has been changing and her pants are tighter around the waist. Now, one of the friends, Ashley, she texts her sister April to meet them for lunch to help figure out what to do because April is a nurse who's well versed in this space. And I'll read you just a little excerpt from the book. April elaborates, many women calculate their BMI, body mass index, and if it's in the normal range, they assume they're healthy, but they could still be obese based on body fat percentage. Is that what skinny fat means? Rachel wonders aloud. Sure, that's another way to say normal weight obesity. A woman may weigh the same amount her whole life, but as she ages and loses bone and muscle mass, the amount of fat in her body increases. The average woman loses 13 pounds of lean mass, bone and muscle, between the ages of 25 and 65. And if you swap those 13 pounds of muscle and bone for fat, it can dramatically change your body composition, Ashley says emphatically. So this is a little glimpse into chapter 1, where we've got the natural aging process that's going to get exacerbated by these hormonal changes. And that sets up this struggle with our body composition, unless we address the lifestyle factors that can really move the needle and help bring cortisol down, get our hunger hormones in check, and make ourselves more sensitive to insulin and all the other processes that are going on. Now, to get our cortisol down, we jump into chapter 2. One way we can do that is by getting better sleep. So chapter 2 is all about sleepless nights. And it starts with Charlotte, who texts her friend, be there in 20. Isabella says, see you soon. And Charlotte rushes into the meeting room where other volunteers are preparing items for the school auction. Sorry, I'm late. I finally fell asleep around 3 and didn't hear my alarm. So while they're preparing these baskets for the school auction, they talk about their sleep issues. And it turns out Hazel, who's one of the women in the group, she's the youngest mom, and she hasn't experienced this firsthand, but she's a PA, a physician's assistant in a GYN office, and she ends up offering a lot of advice. So she ends up sending them a handout from her office after she leaves to recap the key points that she covers. One of the main things is to keep your bedtime consistent. You should be preparing for sleep, not just lying down and expecting your body to respond accordingly. You need to plan for sleep well before it's time for bed. So having a consistent bedtime and wake time helps regulate your circadian rhythm. Making sure that you turn screens off. You know, it's different for different people, but maybe try an hour or two before bed. Get the screen off and get out a nice book that you can actually, a tangible book. Put some pen and paper on your bedside table in case you wake up in the middle of the night with racing thoughts, things that you don't want to forget. You keep going over and over them, but if you write them down, you let your brain relax again and try to go back to sleep. Try not to eat for 2 hours before bed, because if you've got food in your system, your digestive tract is working and you're thinking about absorbing food. And we want the body to be in a much more relaxed state and not be working on digestion. No alcohol for at least 1 hour before bed, preferably 2 or 3 hours. And ideally, no alcohol at all. Be mindful of caffeine. Some people can drink caffeine in the afternoon. For others, it's a night wrecker. And blocking out light and noise and staying cool. So I found that staying cool helps so many people. If you can keep the temperature in your room lower, usually in the mid 60s, it helps a lot with helping people fall asleep. If you have other ideas, why don't you guys put those in the chat while I tell you about tart cherry juice. And then if there's any other ideas, you guys can let me know. But this was a cool study that was published back in 2018, where they looked at tart cherry juice for the treatment of insomnia. And they took people and they gave them 2 weeks of a placebo, 2 weeks of cherry juice, and found that the cherry juice actually increased their sleep time and sleep efficiency because of a certain chemical that is in the cherry juice that helped with certain neurotransmitters. Did you guys know that about cherry juice?
No, that was new. And we do have one other new idea. Hope says she has a cooling mattress and pillows. Have you heard of that before?
Yes. So Hope, did you see that on my previous slide? So they've got gel pillows, cooling mattress pad. Some people just use a cold pack. But that's awesome to hear that that's what you're using and it's effective.
And Rebecca has no trouble falling asleep, but staying asleep is the challenge.
And so are you just lying there awake and frustrated? Is that what's going on?
Rebecca, you want to unmute and share that?
Yeah, I'm there. Yes, in that I might sleep in a couple of hour segments repeatedly through the night and wake up, be alert in between. And it's not because I need to go pee. I'm just up. I might get into bed. I'll be up at 2. I'll be up at 4. When I say up, I don't mean out of bed. I just mean I wake up.
And how long do you stay awake for?
Sometimes it's brief, but sometimes it could be an hour.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I would say that's pretty common. One trick that I think is helpful is have some sort of mantra that you go over and over in your head. And for me, I actually last year I started doing this. Because I can't come up with a mantra. I just pictured the letter M in my head, and then I would just trace the letter M with my, brain over and over and over again. And when I do that, it works so well. I can't even tell you. So I think if you find something that's incredibly boring and you make yourself do it, it might be effective. So have you tried anything like that?
I'll share what I've been doing lately. And by the way, it comes in waves. I might sleep really well, for a couple of weeks. And then, so I'm guessing if I'm not sleeping, it must be stuff that I'm thinking about, even though I'm not aware. But the trick that I learned was to pick a word, any word, and start with the first letter of the word and think of as many free association words you can come up with that start with that letter. And then when you run dry, you go to the second letter. And I never get to finish the word. But
Oh, okay.
so that works pretty well, but it's not a satisfying night's sleep. I got sleep tested, 25 years ago. And I discovered that I'm a really, really light sleeper and I'm waking up constantly through the night. I haven't been tested since then.
Yeah.
But because I may think I have a good night's sleep and then I'll be yawning in the middle of the afternoon. It's not effective or efficient sleep.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it sounds like you've got some strategies and you're,
Yeah.
on top of it. So yeah, hopefully, you'll get through a phase and, get some good sleep here.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And Debbie, Brooke takes cherry juice every night before bedtime. So she must have heard of that study.
Excellent.
Dark cherry juice? Is there some particular?
Tart cherry juice. Yeah.
And how much do people drink?
It depends on if it's concentrated or not concentrated. Let me see if they had, in this study, they did 240 milliliters, which, can anybody translate that to cups for us? No? Okay.
I can't.
I'll check it on my phone. Just give me a
Okay.
second.
Check it on Google or something for us.
Yeah. Just
Yeah.
one moment.
They did that 2 times a day, not just at night, which was interesting in the study.
240 milliliters is 8 fluid ounces. That's a
Ah.
lot.
That makes sense though. Like that's a typical, beverage glass. Okay. Well, let's move on to another lifestyle factor that really moves the needle as far as symptoms and overall health, which you guys, if you've been to Debbie's classes before, that eating plants really has an enormous impact on our health. So anti-inflammatory properties, antioxidants, all the nutrients, these plant foods are the most nutrient dense things you can eat. And they are the things that contain fiber, which has so many health benefits, including feeding our microbiome. But you guys probably know a lot about plants. I'm happy to answer any questions about them. But I thought one thing we should focus on tonight as we talk about menopause is a specific group of foods. Can you type in the chat? What's the common ingredient in these foods? Who got it first?
Rebecca got it first,
Okay,
and it is soy.
there you go, Rebecca. Did we get some other soy answers too?
Yes.
Okay. All right, well, if you didn't recognize some of these, this is edamame, tofu, tempeh, soybeans, soy sauce. I don't have any miso on this picture. I don't have any plant-based soy milks, but these are all soy products. And I talked earlier about the WAVES study, which was the women's study for the alleviation of vasomotor symptoms. So vasomotor symptoms are hot flashes. And this was published in Menopause back in 2021. This was a study done at PCRM. They took 38 postmenopausal women who had 2 or more hot flashes per day, and they separated them into 2 groups. One group was on a low-fat vegan diet that had half a cup of cooked soybeans a day, and the other group did not change their diet. And they followed them for 12 weeks, and they gave them a mobile app to record their hot flashes, how frequent they were, how severe they were. And lo and behold, total hot flashes decreased. Total hot flashes decreased 79% in the intervention group, 49% in control. But moderate to severe hot flashes decreased 84% in the intervention group and 42% in the control group. Now, this is funny, right? Like the control group had their hot flashes decrease. That is so classic, right? For hot flashes, they come and go as they please. You don't know when they're coming. And they might be around for a couple months and then they go away for a couple months. And you think, oh, I'm all done with my hot flashes. And then they come back, even worse than they were before. Have you guys had this happen? Yes. Okay. But then, you can just start eating more soybeans again and they go away. At least that's what I was doing. But anyway, so the WAVE study showed us that that soy can have this effect. Does anybody know what ingredient it is in soy that reduces the hot flashes?
We heard from Rebecca, it's isoflavored.
Oh yeah, I was able just to pop up my chat there. Yeah, isoflavones. Yeah. So soy is one food that has isoflavones. Other foods have isoflavones too. Nuts and seeds, some other legumes have isoflavones. And isoflavones, they have some estrogenic properties. They look chemically, the structure of them is similar to estrogen. It's not identical to estrogen, but they can bind to estrogen receptors. And we thought that's how they were working, and perhaps that partly is how they work, but now we know that those isoflavones are digested by our gut bacteria into another compound called equal, and that has an effect on the estrogen receptors too. So there might be two mechanisms of action. It's not clear, but we do know that they do decrease vasomotor symptoms. And just as well as pretty much any other treatment that you would find that you'd get from a doctor's office or anywhere else.
One question was, do you have any recommendations on brands that we could find shelled edamame or soybeans?
Oh,
Actually, I want to clarify that. I've been shopping for them and I can only find them grown in China and they're not organic. Sea Point Farms, they sell them in pods, shelled, and I think dried, but they're all coming out of China.
Interesting. Has anybody else been able to find them?
Whole
I know
Foods,
the bag I get is organic. I just don't know what it is.
yeah, Whole Foods
Right.
used to carry some out that were not grown in China, but I haven't seen them lately.
And I would say I usually eat soybeans rather than edamame. Oh, you did say, so Rebecca, you're saying I like soybeans out of the pod. Oh, are you talking about young soybeans, which is edamame, or mature soybeans?
No, fresh ones, the green ones. If I go to the salad bar, for example, at Whole Foods, they have these beautiful bright green, fresh soybeans. And I'm going to go in there and ask them where they're getting theirs from, because the ones that are packaged that I can buy, they're frozen and I can microwave them or steam them, but they're from China and
Gotcha.
I don't trust them.
Yeah, okay.
I don't know what they do to them. So, and I haven't found them in Whole Foods. Once upon a time, Whole Foods had a brand, but I don't think they're selling them anymore.
Gotcha.
Brooke, this is Debbie. I heard Hannah Kaliova, who was the director of this research project, and she spoke about this. And I'm going to ask you if you saw it in the write-up of the results, because she indicated that you need to have soybeans and not the edamame, that the edamame are the young ones and they're not mature enough to bring on the results that they saw in the study.
Yeah, I thought I do want to clarify that. So so when they're green, they're really young, as opposed to a mature soybean, which is actually what you make tofu and soy milk out of. So I buy my soybeans, they're like the same color as garbanzo beans, chickpeas, when they're dried and when you cook them, they're that light tan color.
So you're using dried soybeans.
So nobody really makes, I think maybe one time I found soybeans that were already cooked in a can, like you can buy black beans, but typically you have to buy these soybeans dried and then cook them yourself.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'll cook a big batch and I'll just freeze, small containers of them and pull them out so that they're ready. You just have to thaw them. Yeah.
You're distinguishing between the fresh, the little green edamame and the dried soybean. They're not this, even though
They're
maybe.
not the same. Yeah, the green ones are immature. I'm trying to think of another
Oh.
plant that's similar. Can't think of one off the top of my head, but yeah, the soybean that we're talking about has been around. It's much older, and it dried up, and then you buy them dried and cook them the same way you would cook dry black beans or garbanzo beans or anything like that.
And I'm going to be using those in my presentation or
Oh,
my
good.
cooking demonstrations. So I'll show you what the dried beans look like after they've been cooked.
Perfect. Awesome.
And as you observe the chat, you can see there are some suggestions even on edamame. So check the chat if you're interested in those. Thank you so much for addressing this.
Yeah, this is great. It's always good to have everybody, chiming in and offering suggestions too. I love it. Okay, so speaking of food, chapter 3, I focused on a specific area of nutrition just to try to help wrap people's head around food timing, why it's not good for women to fast. Have you guys ever noticed that you can give a man and a woman the same prescription for food and exercise and the outcome is totally different? And most often it's the woman who's feeling like, what the heck, right? Like all this work and I didn't really get much change. Well, it turns out that most of the research that's been done and that's used to make recommendations is based on male data. But now we're getting more specific about women when we do the research. And so we see that women and men have actually different responses to food. So women have receptors in their brain that sense whether energy is available. And the activation of these receptors determines, here we go again, catabolism or anabolism, whether we're going to break things down or build things back up. Because the body wants to know, is it a good time to reproduce? Or should I be preparing for famine? So am I safe or am I in danger? Which is why when women are involved in heavy training programs, where they have a really low body fat percentage or they suffer from eating disorders, they lose their period because the body knows it's not a good time to reproduce. And it turns out that to minimize these breakdown states and really optimize our time in building muscle, building bone, we need to eat with our circadian rhythm. We need to eat within 30 to 60 minutes of waking up to let our body know, oh, we're okay. There's going to be food available today. Let's not stay in this breakdown state and store fat. Let's get ready to rev up our system and build. And it's also really important that the more active you are to make sure that you're really fueling around your training. If you're lifting weights, if you're going out for long hikes, things like that. Okay, so that brings us to chapter 4, which is muscle. So strong is healthy, and maintaining muscle mass is critical as we age. So put yes in the chat if you know this, because this is so important. Like this is one of my main focus for people is making sure they're maintaining muscle mass. Yes, 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 yes. Good, 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 good. You guys are making me happy. So chapter 4 starts my, 4-chapter span of musculoskeletal health. So I don't think I've mentioned yet that we have estrogen receptors all over our body. Did you guys know this? We have estrogen receptors, places where estrogen can bind everywhere, including our muscles. Now, estrogen, while we're in our reproductive years, it is a huge stimulus for muscle growth and for strong muscle contractions. And when we lose that estrogen, we really start to lose our strength. And you lose your strength and your power before you lose your muscle mass. And so that shows up as, okay, I look the same, but now all of a sudden it's harder to lift that bag of dog food or to lift my granddaughter, or to help my dog get up in the back of the car. You know, like all of a sudden your strength goes down. And it's because you no longer have estrogen around binding to the sites on the muscles that help it stay strong and produce these really good contractions. So instead, things slip apart. So are you guys familiar with muscle tissue? It's got these actin and myosin filaments. They glide across like this, and that's what keeps them strong. But when you lose estrogen, they're too weak. They can't bind in the same way that they used to. But the good news is that we can do something different to help maintain that strength and get it back. So this happened to me. And I've been a personal trainer since 2008. So like, I feel like I'm pretty good at staying strong and fit. But I didn't really understand what was going on with this estrogen thing. And I started to get weaker and weaker. And then I discovered several years ago this whole situation that was going on. And the other day, my dog got stuck in the compost bin outside. She was hanging on her belly. Her feet were in the front. She was having a heyday chewing on some cucumbers that were down in the compost bin, but her legs were dangling off the back. And I was like, oh my God, look at you. What are we going to do? Because I know the last time I tried to pick her up, which, you know, was like a couple of years ago, I don't need to pick her up very often. And she's 70 pounds. I walked over and I picked her right up and I was like, oh my gosh. Like I've been doing this strength training in this new way for probably, you know, a little over a year, like in this really intense way that I'm going to tell you. It's not really intense. It's just very focused. And I have gotten so much stronger. So it's just a testament that like, as we age, it doesn't mean that everything is going to be on the decline. We can change the trajectory. So the way we do that is that we focus on our rep ranges. So have you guys, who here has done any resistance training in the past? Any strength training? Hands up. There we go. Okay. And so typically women would do 10 to 12 to 15 reps or more, right? We didn't do reps that were 5 or 6, right? I always thought, why would anybody just do 5 or 6 reps? I never understood that. Well, it turns out that that is the range that you need to be in to generate optimal strength and power. So when you work out in those higher rep ranges, you're working on hypertrophy. So you're building a nice, beautiful muscle. You're increasing all sorts of things inside the muscle, but you're not strengthening those bonds that I was talking about. So somebody can look well-toned and have a good muscle definition, but the muscle itself might not be strong because they're not lifting heavy enough. And so by using a low rep range, it means you're going to lift a weight that's pretty heavy that after 5 reps, you're like, I'm setting this thing down. That's it. And it's so much fun. It's so much fun to lift just something 5 times and put it back down. I love it. And it works. It's so awesome. And the reason that it works is that now, instead of estrogen binding to the site, you're using the central nervous system, because when you're lifting something that heavy, you're recruiting all of these motor units and muscle fibers in order to lift this thing, and you'll feel it. It feels so different than lifting something 10, 12, 15 times. Oh, here I go, here I go, here I go. Oh, no, my muscles, oh, I'm getting a little bit fatigued. Oh, it's starting to burn. But it doesn't like make your whole body feel like, oh my God, I got to put that down. When you lift heavy, it's like, oh my heavens, this thing is going to the ground right now. I don't want to lift it anymore. Now, when you start lifting this, if you haven't lifted before, you start with lower weights. But if you're somebody who has been lifting and you think, oh, I want to try this, I do these sets that are 5 by 5. Here's a page from chapter 4 where I've got 2 women, Gail and Serena. They're in the gym for a workout and they warm up with some glute bridges. And then Gail is showing Serena the protocol where she does low reps for 5 sets. And so here it's 2 exercises. So on this particular day, they're going to do goblet squats and hip thrusts. They're going to do 5 sets. So there's set 1, set 2, set 3, 4, 5. They're going to do 5 reps. and she's going to start with 25 pounds as her weight. She moves up to 30 pounds on set 2, but then she stays there. Well, then in set 4, she only gets to 4 reps because she gets a little bit exhausted. So she thinks, oh, I'm going to drop the weight back to 25, and she gets to 5 reps on set 5. Now, all of this I have put into a fitness journal that I created. And on my website, which is drbrookebussard.com, on my website, I have a 30-minute video that walks you through the entire fitness journal. So if you just want to see what it looks like and get a sense of what's going on in the fitness journal, I have a video that's, quite lengthy just to really detail the protocol that I laid out. But all you need is 20 or 30 minutes, 2 or 3 days a week to do these 5x5s. And you can see tremendous strength gain. And not only does it help with the muscle, but it helps with your bones also. Because when you're strengthening muscle, muscle is attached to bone through the tendon, right? Shake your head, everybody. You got muscle, and then the tendon attaches to the bone, right? Okay, so when you're strengthening a muscle, if you're pulling on it really hard, like we're going to do with these heavy 5x5s, it's also, the tendon is now pulling on the bone, and that pulling sensation stimulates the bone to want to grow new bone cells. And I will show you here in just a minute a study where they showed this. Okay, so let's talk a minute about our bones. So our skeleton is something that is so often taken for granted, right? But it's such an amazing structure. It's a repository for minerals, which is why it's critical to fuel well, so that the body doesn't need to go in there and mine for calcium and phosphorus. We need our minerals to stay in our bones, and we want to keep our bone density high, because hollow bones are for hummingbirds. Now, menopause significantly speeds up our bone loss and increases our risk of osteoporosis. Did you guys know this? Yeah, I think this is pretty well known, right? Estrogen, when estrogen was floating around, it maintained a balance between the cells that build bone and the ones that break it down. And normally those are constantly active and remodeling our skeleton. But once that balance gets disrupted during menopause, women can lose up to 20% of their bone density during the 5 to 7 years around menopause. It's very significant. Now, we can use DEXA scans and TBS, which is a trabecular bone score, to look at your bone density and your bone quality. And we know that now we can improve our bone with resistance training and jumping. But we want to make sure that we also work to prevent falls and work on our balance, because if your bones are weak and you don't fall, it's not a big deal, right? So working on your balance is key to make sure that you don't fall. So this is from chapter 5. I've got 2 friends, Annika and Valerie. They're warming up to play pickleball. Annika recently got the results from her DEXA scan, which showed osteoporosis, which is low bone mass. Now, have most of you guys had a DEXA scan? Some of you have not had a DEXA scan before. I really think they should do DEXA scans earlier. I think typically they're done at 65 unless you have a reason to do it otherwise. But it is great if you can get one earlier, at least so you can get a baseline. But a DEXA scan, you just lay down on this table, and the machine, it's just sort of over you, but not even like a CAT scan, just a little bit. And it sends some x-rays down through your hips and your spine, and sometimes they do the wrist. And they figure out what your bone density is. And it gives you a T-score. And if your T-score is -1 or above, you have normal bone mass. If it's -1.1 to -2.4, it's osteopenia, and -2.5 and lower is osteoporosis. And what they're doing is they're comparing your bones to the average peak bone mass or peak bone density of a healthy 30-year-old woman. So anyway, Valerie, in chapter 5, Valerie starts to give her friend Annika advice about how to maximize her bone health. And she stresses that she needs to keep her bones and muscles as strong as possible, So she tells her about the Lift More study. So they're talking about the Lift More study, and she says, you need to use enough resistance, whether it's with dumbbells, cables, or bands, to cause the muscles to pull on the bones. A study called Lift More, I love that name, took 100 women with low bone density and split them into two groups, high intensity lifting and low intensity lifting. And both groups worked out twice a week for just 30 minutes. And after 8 months, the heavy lifters significantly improved their bone density in their hips and spines. Isn't that awesome? I think it's incredible. So incredible. It's so much better than some of the other options out there that people are afraid to, take. So it's great that we have other options. Now, they go on to talk about dairy and calcium and vitamin D. And Valerie, tells her the most rapid bone loss happens in the first 5 to 8 years after menopause. And Annika asks why. And Valerie answers, when estrogen isn't around, the osteoclasts, the cells that break down bone, they act like kids whose parents have left town. They go wild at first, but eventually they slow down and women lose bone at the same rate as men after that. But this is why men lose bone as they age, but women lose it in this cliff-like fashion because of the estrogen not being there, and these bones or these cells in the bone are actively chewing it up, and they no longer have that other cell to balance it out. So women do this, they go down, and then they go across, and men just sort of keep going like this. Yeah. So it's good if we can try to mitigate that cliff-like drop-off on our bone density. Okay. Now, I think time is getting tight, so I'll speak briefly about maximal efforts. I have found high-intensity interval training to be very effective, particularly when people have some visceral fat that has accumulated from this rise in cortisol, where you do short bursts of effort a few times each week, and it stimulates your fast-twitch muscle fibers, and it improves your glucose uptake in the muscle, so you can develop these receptors on the cells that don't require insulin to help glucose get into the cell, which is a pretty cool thing. You increase your mitochondria and lower your blood pressure. So that section, there's a section in the Fitness Journal also about doing these maximal efforts, because the Fitness Journal is about strength training, interval training, and jump training for your bones. Okay, let's see, Debbie, how are we doing on time? Let's see, 7 o'clock. Okay, so I'm going to take it toward the end here.
Question. Did you say jump training?
Jump training, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I
So,
thought I heard that.
yes. So jump training for bone health. So when the muscle pulls on the bone, when you're strength training, that stimulates the bone because you're tugging on it. But if you're jumping and you're landing, the ground force that's going up into the bone also stimulates the bone. So I have found that in the research, 50 to 100 jumps per day, 4 days a week, has increased people's bone density. So it can just be, doing these star jumps where you're just standing and jumping, got your arms going up in the air. That's why they call it a star. But you can do side to side jumps. You can do skaters. There's all sorts of jumps that you can do. And I give all those options in the Fitness Journal too. But it's good not to just always do the same thing, because you want to stimulate the bone from different angles, which is why they have found that runners, because they're always going in that same plane, they don't have as good bone density as people who do, like a tennis player, who would be going side to side and moving around laterally also. Yeah.
And Brooke, what if you have heel spurs or plantar fasciitis?
So one thing would be to get those addressed. Like, you don't want those to be something that you try to live the rest of your life with. Particularly the plantar fasciitis. there are so many good physical therapy things now to help with plantar fasciitis. And then the spurs, I would talk to an orthopedic surgeon if it's something that, is really rate limiting. Just because our activity is so important for our long-term health that I would love to see those addressed if possible. Yeah. Okay. And so I just thought I'd touch briefly on HRT. Do you guys have questions about hormone replacement? Or do you want, I can
I'm
talk about
interested
anything
in
else you
knowing
guys-
about it.
Oh, okay. Okay. Hope. Yeah, so there's different kinds of HRT that are available. Some people call it MHT now, and some people are just calling it HT, hormone therapy, because it, varies depending on what you're using it for. But for menopause replacement therapy or menopause hormone therapy, you can take it orally. You can put on patches, which is transdermal, so that the estrogen is absorbed through the skin. You can take it vaginally, and it stays just in that tissue. So people who have, things going on where they're like, I really just don't want to take estrogen, or you have an active breast cancer or something like that, but you've got symptoms in the vagina or your urethra, or you're getting recurrent UTIs, or the tissue down there is just so brittle that like you can't ride a bike, all sorts of reasons why putting estrogen in vaginally is helpful. So those are some of the ways that you can apply it. The pros, of course, are symptom relief. It's very effective at reducing hot flashes. It slows bone loss. It's FDA approved for osteoporosis now for women. It can protect your heart health, your brain health, prevent UTIs like I talked about. And actually the cons are quite low. This has a very low risk of breast cancer, low risk of blood clots. But certainly it is something that, you need to discuss with your own physician about whether or not it's right for you. I do like to mention that the formulations that you get from the FDA, most of them are bioidentical. A lot of times people think that you have to get it compounded to make it bioidentical, and that's not the case at all. And actually compounded formulations, they're not going through the FDA, and you don't know exactly, what the what the formulation is. It's not, I can't think of the right word. Yeah, it's not consistent. That's a great word. Yeah, it's not consistent. Yeah, it's hard to make it consistent. So, so I'm much in favor of the FDA approved bioidentical hormones. Yeah.
Brooke, what about those hormones that are real popular right now, where they, I think there are seeds where they put them plant them underneath your skin?
Yeah, the pellets.
The pellets, yes.
Yeah. So the pellets are not recommended by most OBGYNs that I have talked to, because it's hard to change the dose if you need to. It's and I think it's hard to say how much is getting absorbed. I think they much prefer a transdermal approach than a pellet.
Okay.
Yeah. So I can
What
see that.
about someone that has, we have a family history of blood clots. Our mother died of a blood clot. And I also have AFib, and my dad had AFib. So would that be contraindicated then for the HRT?
So the transdermal ones do not affect the risk of blood clots. So
Okay.
the patch, because that's just going right into the skin and into the bloodstream, and it doesn't have to go through the first pass metabolism through the liver. It's when you take something orally and it goes through the liver that it affects the clotting factors and increases your risk of blood clots.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So what about HRT postmenopausal?
So the current recommendations are if you are within a 10-year window, then it's still a good time to start HRT to reduce your risk of cardiovascular disease and bone loss.
Okay.
Yeah.
And if you're past the 10 years?
If you're past the 10 years, it looks more like that original WHI study where you might have increased risk of cardiovascular disease. Because by that point, the theory is that you have enough plaque in your arteries that the estrogen can make those plaques unstable and create a problem. But so I think, I mean, if you're a plant-based eater and you probably don't have plaque, it's something you could definitely talk to your OBGYN about.
Okay, excellent, excellent presentation. Thank you so much. But now is time to answer your questions. We have a few minutes, so if you would like to put it in the chat box, or if you would like to unmute yourself, please do.
At the very beginning, you said something, and I don't know if you said tendinitis or tinnitus, due to loss of estrogen.
Tinnitus.
Tinnitus, which is ringing in the ears. So we have estrogen receptors everywhere, including in the inner ear. And for some women who get tinnitus around the time of menopause, if you give them HRT, the tinnitus goes away.
So if you don't know when you went through menopause because you had a hysterectomy but had ovaries, where would you count your 10 years from? 51?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Yeah, because your ovaries were probably still, functioning normally. I think with a hysterectomy, actually, so I take that back. With a hysterectomy, I think typically they say probably you have gone through menopause about 2 years earlier. So probably 49 would probably be a better guess.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
What about HRT with hyperplasia?
So that is probably a decision for the GYN, but I think in general, it's not a contraindication.
Okay.
Yeah. There are very few contraindications these days. It's proving to be quite safe, yeah, as they turn the data more and more.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I'm
This-
curious, for someone who lifted a 70-pound dog, what kind of weight amounts are you personally lifting, just as a frame of reference?
See, I can't see who's talking.
Oh, it's Rebecca, I'm
Oh, there
sorry.
you are, Rebecca. No, I just needed to scroll my thing across. So you mean like when I do a dumbbell bench press, how much do I use?
Yeah, or I don't know if you're doing weighted squats. Like I'm gonna set up my gym at home.
Mm-hmm.
So it might be what weights I would use for, or you would use if you're doing, well, are you doing barbell squats or?
So I don't put anything across my shoulders because I don't want to load up my spine at all at this age.
Yeah.
So like if I do a squat, I'll either do a goblet squat, but I don't really have a weight heavy enough or that I could hold with my hands that would make me fatigued by 5 reps. So I'll do a suitcase squat where I hold a dumbbell in each hand and hang them down by my sides. It's called a suitcase squat, and I'll hold, like a 45 in each hand.
Okay, that's what I'm looking. The reason I'm asking is I'm shopping for adjustable dumbbells.
Uh-huh.
And I'm starting at 0 weight. And so I can either buy a set that will go to 25 or a set that will go to 50.
Okay.
And I'm just about to turn 69. And so I'm not I want to make that investment and figure out, do I get the smaller set or do I get the bigger set?
I guess what's your starting point?
I own 5 pounds, hand weights, but I don't know. I have no idea what my progression might look like, I guess is what I'm saying. But I'm at a point where I'm ready to put some money down and try and understand what the progression might look like.
I guess you can
25 in a
start-
pound sounds like a lot to me, but, and you're younger than me, but you're doing 45. So that's the frame of reference for me.
Yeah. Yeah, you just want to make sure you get your form right before
Yeah.
you load. You know, you
Okay.
want your form to be solid. And you can always make it harder. So you could go with the lower weights. And you can always make it harder by by increasing your time on your lowering phase of the squat. So you could do a 5-second lowering phase and then stand back up. So it might be 4, 3, 2, 1, up.
Got
You
it.
know, and then so you have more time under tension. And so the weight, if you're using less weight, it's going to feel heavier
Got it.
by the
Thank
end of 5 reps. Yeah.
Great
Okay.
idea.
Okay.
Okay, so Joanne asked, what about weighted vest?
Yeah. So the weighted vest. The weighted vest, it works really well for men. The problem is for women, our center of gravity is in our hips and our butts. For men, it's in their chest. So when women wear a weighted vest, it doesn't happen for every woman, but I think for a lot of women, I worry about them going on these long walks with a weighted vest and it changing your biomechanics while you're walking. So for people who have a weighted vest, I say, okay, it might be helpful in a situation like Rebecca's in. So she could put the weighted vest on along with her dumbbells if she was ready to increase the load on her body while she was squatting. But she's not trying to just go in like a walk where her body has normal mechanics, but now all of a sudden she's added weight up above where her natural center of gravity is. So for women, I like weighted vests to add increased resistance on strength training, but I don't really like it for endurance activity.
Okay, what about kettlebells? Kettlebell swings, are they good for strength and increasing balance?
Yeah, I like kettlebells. Kettlebells are fun. They're, unless you're using ones that are pretty heavy. And kettlebell, like I wouldn't do a kettlebell swing as my 5x5. When you do a kettlebell swing, it's, sort of a different objective. But if you have heavy enough kettlebells that you could use them for your 5x5s, that's totally fine too. Like it's just a matter of, do you like to hold a kettlebell? I find them a little more awkward, but some people do great with them.
Okay, and Terry asked, we do 100 squats a day. Is that too many? And this is without weights. We are 50 and 45.
Okay, so that means your legs have a lot of endurance. And endurance is great, but we also want strength. So they're two different things. Women are typically really good at endurance anyway. We have more type 1 fibers than men. Men have more type 2 fibers, which are those fast twitch fibers. So we want to try to get some more of those fast twitch fibers and do some things that are really heavy. So really the 100 squats a day is just an endurance activity, but it's not power and strength in the way that I'm describing this goal that we have as we get older. Does that make sense, Terry?
Yes,
Yes.
it does. We're
Okay.
sisters, yes.
Okay, gotcha. Okay.
Okay, and I think this is going to be our last question.
Okay.
Carol says she's 76 and had bone density tests showing slight osteopenia. No one's recommended DEXA scan. I think it's been 5 years. Am I due for another one?
How do I proceed?
Yes.
Do we continue to have bone density or DEXA scans or tests forever or?
Well, I guess it depends on what you would want to do about it. So if you're thinking, oh, I want to strength train and do a little bit of jumping, and I wouldn't want to take any bone meds, then you would just do the action plan and not worry about taking the DEXA scan.
Okay,
Does that make sense?
yes.
Yeah.
Does insurance typically cover a DEXA scan being done?
They do, if it's indicated, so usually 65 or older unless your doctor suspects that you might have low bone mass due to if you shrank 1.5 inches, I think is one of the things they can put on the sheet. And the other would be if you had a fall and broke a bone in a way that was suspicious for osteoporosis, as opposed to like being in a car accident and breaking a bone.
Yeah.
So there's certain factors that make it coverable by insurance. And then I guess maybe it's every 10 years unless
Yeah.
something else happens.
2 years.
What's that?
If you have osteopenia or osteoporosis, it's every 2 years. You can get it done every 2 years and get it paid by Medicare.
Gotcha, if you want to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just wondering like why her doctor hasn't had another one after 5 years.
And the problem is that I have changed doctors, I've moved, and I think this is just
gotcha.
slipped through the cracks.
Gotcha. Yeah, 10
And
years
so-
seems like a long time. So I feel like you're probably overdue, but it's also a function of, is this something that I would act any differently upon based on the result?
Yes,
Yeah,
and that's a whole discussion in itself.
right, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Sorry, can I ask a quick question about squats?
Yeah, I would love it.
How do I have several friends who've had knee replacements. And I was just wondering, because I remember being in elementary school and one of the things we did was always deep knee bends. And I'm thinking though, as you get older, is there a potential for doing damage to your knees and having issues with it? I was just curious.
Yeah, no, most people say it's the opposite. If you don't do the squats,
You
then
don't
you're
do,
more likely to have issues with your knees because you're not strengthening
okay,
the tendons and ligaments and muscles around it.
okay,
Yeah.
good, thank you.
Mhm.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. Good question though.
Brooke,
Well, Debbie, this has been so fun.
Yes, thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Your presentation was awesome, and I cannot thank you enough. I'm sure everybody is feeling the exact same way I am feeling. So thank you so very much. From one Food for Life instructor to another, we appreciate you. So
All right. Well, I'm gonna let you guys enjoy the rest, and I'll go cook for the family.
okay,
Okay.
thank you so much.
All right. Good to meet you guys. I'll see some of you at ICNM.
you will. Bye,
Yes.
Brooke.
Okay. Bye, guys.
Bye. Okay, that was awesome. So thanks so much.
Thanks, Debbie.
Thanks,
Oh, Debbie.
Debbie.
Thank
Good
you.
night,
Very
ladies.
nice class.
Bye, good night,
Good night.
everybody.
Thank you.
Good stuff.